personal views and opinions expressed by our podcast guests are their own and are not legal advice or official statements by their organizations. Hello, my name is Debbie Reynolds. They call me the Data Diva. This is the Data Diva Talks Privacy podcast, where we discuss data privacy issues with industry leaders around the world with information that businesses need to know now. I have a very special guest on the show, all the way from Bucharest, Romania, Daniel Suciu. He is a data protection expert and the head of Uncommon Sense Advisory. Welcome.
Thank you, Debbie, and I'm very glad to finally meet you after many years of following your work. I'm really honored to be able to speak with you.
Aww.
And I'm waiting for this. Really, you are a role model for many.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, I'm super excited to have you on the show. You and I have known each other for many years, virtually on LinkedIn. I always love your commentary because I think the things that you say, they are rooted in so much reality and practicality and how people work in data spaces. So I think, fortunately, some people who talk about data protection, they talk about it from like a theory standpoint, but I feel as though when I'm talking with you, it's definitely coming from a practical, pragmatic point of view from a lived experience. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, to data protection itself and how it's called in Europe, we don't call it privacy, we call it data protection mostly, but it's same. I'm relatively new. I have 7 years. However, my background working in IT and as a business analyst and working in internal audit, risk management, and others helped me a lot in this area because a lot of knowledge are very useful. That was the reason when I joined data protection. I noticed that I have some knowledge that could be useful aside from the legal one. So the only thing what I have to do, it was a few thousand hours to understand the laws, by the way, and not only the laws around the globe and all the recommendations from different authority. It was a challenge for me to read about court cases, judge on this, so to understand the legal part also a little better. Not to become an expert from a legal perspective, but to understand that. So,
Right. And I love your path and your journey because I think your path and journey is very similar to mine, where I was helping companies with digital transformation and different other types of projects. And back then, data protection in the US, especially, really wasn't like a quote unquote job. You were working, you needed to know what you were doing and things like that. So it's actually interesting to see that it's turning into like a career path for people. But I wanted your point of view about how you're finding being in data protection, especially as you say, you studied the law and the legal part, but you're not a lawyer. So people like me and you who are not lawyers, what do you think that path is like, or how have you found that to be in your work?
very challenging, and I can say 99% it's only for people who are self-motivated, because really it's not a well-paid job. I have worked almost one entire professional life in IT. Even the basic jobs in IT are better paid usually, and even compared with DPO of large organization of big banks worth billions. So it's not a well-paid job. Maybe could be as consultancy. Yes, in some cases. But as a DPO, unfortunately, it's not for everybody or not doing only this. The good part is that it's connected to many other areas. And I'm happy to see that as I'm an IT guy and I was specialist in cybersecurity and now moving to this data protection and trying to understand the law. I saw many lawyers and people with legal background now studying and trying to understand IT, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, which is good because this is a cross-functional domain. And after some times, it doesn't matter where you are coming from. I have in my contact excellent specialists coming from marketing, coming from accountancy, coming from legal, from IT, from cyber. It needs some work, a lot of learning, which is good. See, I'm a very good example for younger generation. I'm 60 now, and I have to learn continuously. So this is the future for our children and our nephews. That was clear. They will have to learn their entire life. But I consider that a good thing, something nice. It's challenging and keeping us alive and interested.
I think you made an important point that, especially now in organizations, it's important to have people who have multidisciplinary skill set and can talk with people at different levels of the organization as opposed to being like in a silo. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that was a problem I encountered 25 years ago when I have worked in some cross-functional projects. And it was a challenge trying to understand people from other areas. Sometimes it took me months to understand what they are talking about, not the detail of there. But if you really care, you understand that. And you need just to care enough in order to learn from them and to really communicate. And if you really want to learn, the other people will notice and will really help you if they will see interest from your part. It doesn't matter if you are good or not at the beginning. If you're interested, you can learn. And people initially they might not accept you, but in time you can get trust. In some cases, I got support and buy-in from some initiatives from other department where it was refused from my department, and I got for some business intelligence part from marketing, in other from finance, in other from customer operation, which were not seen as an important thing for my department, being the IT. So it's always a way to cross the barrier between, and that means interest and really care to understand that people. That's the only things one requires, I suppose.
I think that's true. I've seen people try to go into data protection or data privacy roles, and they try to do it in a way that's very forceful and not very open. And that's just a disaster because people won't help you. They won't give you the things that you need. They won't feel that you respect them and what their issues are or what their challenges are. So I think really listening to them and like you say, they will help you if they know that you have an interest in what they're doing and really care about the things that they care about.
Yeah,
I'd love for you to chat about this. You posted something recently about checklists, or why you hate
yeah.
checklists, and I would love for you to expound upon that. Post is great, but tell me your thoughts on this one.
In my experience, I have used many tools, and what I learn is to apply knowledge from one area. I learn a lot sometimes from people from other areas, like this a lot of learning on regarding checklist or questionnaire from customer satisfaction questionnaires. This I started. Then learning with my daughter from about sociology. So, and I was also very interested in psychology. I have read a few 100,000 pages about psychology. So putting these together and trying to see what it works. So I try to be interested, and like in any learning, sometimes it's trial and error. I have read something, trying to apply the theory. it doesn't work as supposed to work. So making correction, adapting, making a root cause analysis, as I was a business analyst, trying to understand why. And then I saw that there are simple way of making this work. But like in the latest article, what I said, exactly like people to perceive when you send a questionnaire that you care, not it's not from a robot, from a human being. So how you put the question, what are the choices? If they see some interest in the real person and relevant question from their perspective, they will be a lot more willing to give you good information. And it's a tool to use and overall use for wrong purposes. So checklists are good in some cases, not in for every usage.
What is happening? I agree with that, by the way. I have questionnaires that I use and I do them custom. And to me, like the order in which you ask things is very important because depending on the way the person really thinks about the problem, it helps them understand why you're asking the question as opposed to just a random list of questions. So,
Yeah.
yeah. What is happening in the world right now in data protection or privacy that's concerning you?
Unfortunately, what I don't like is that big companies and many other experts are mimicking privacy, data protection, pretending that are doing with the accent of the formal aspect, but sometimes it's very transparent that they don't care to implement the actual principles. What I like in GDPR, European legislation, which I don't like everything. Clearly, some parts could be improved a lot, but the part with the principles. So there are, see, that's the core, I suppose, where we should start. So, what are the basic principles we want to embed into our processes, into our companies, organization, products, or whatever? This should be the main focus. Unfortunately, many prefer to talk about some more sexy stuff, like talking about international transfers a lot. You know, the discussion which was in the last 20 years, the Europe US transfer. It was that after that privacy shield, it's not good, not applicable. In real life, in almost any company, nothing happened. It was good. The transfer was legal or not. They didn't change any tool. Nothing happened. Just some lawyer have write a long document that nobody read it. Not those applying the processes, or at least the top management. They were not even aware. So now talking about a lot of people talking about artificial intelligence, AI. I understand that it's a real topic and should be addressed. And I'm passionate about this for 40 years ago. When I learned Lisp, which was a programming language developed theoretically for artificial intelligence. So I tried to study it. I was interested, including the literature like Isaac Asimov books on that, and which seems to be quite relevant to today. But now are a lot of experts, and instead of putting question, analyzing things, we are at the beginning. We don't know. No, no, no. We have thousand experts knowing exactly what we should do. I don't think that anybody knows. It's good asking question, analyzing the risk, having some measures against to prevent. Yes, but too much noise and it's difficult to see which are the relevant voices and what part is the noise, unfortunately. I'm not able to tell. I know a lot of some people, but the people I know, but could be a lot of others which are very relevant, and I don't know. I cannot find them. I cannot identify, or it would require too much time for this. So,
I think that's true. For me, I look to people who've been interested in data before GDPR. So
Yeah.
for me, those people, they really care about data protection and they a lot of times come from different areas and they intersect with data protection and privacy. You wrote something recently about how to recognize a decent privacy or data protection consultant. Give me your point of view on that for the audience.
Yeah, first I tried with the negative part a few years ago, what not to accept, because I saw based on wrong example, like selling solutions, these are compliant, I make you compliant. So no empty promises. You cannot make somebody compliant. You can help it. They have to work. It's not possible. You can support to embed into their organization processes and so on. You don't have to force them to say that's the most important thing they should do. No, they are running a business, some of them. And this is one out of maybe 20 other legislation they have to follow. So it's a concern. And it's easy to point them the risk. Which are the risk for them? For some kind of businesses, there are huge risks. For others, close to zero. It's a factory where they have with their employees. That's all. No data, nothing at all. And try to prioritize and to focus on what really matters for them. To add some value, or at least not to ruin too much from their processes. Some were selling a lot of documents. You need 20 procedures. And I said, it's not possible. They're running a business and they have 3 procedures. And I came with data protection, you need other 20. But they have 3 for all their stuff. They're doing their business. And maybe 1 for human resources. So not to exaggerate and point out the risk and do the things with them. So to let something after you left, sometimes not the document. By the way, I always refuse to write documents on my own. I never accept this. I can write with the people from the organization. If I write them are completely useless. I can have a structure, I have a template, I have an example, but and to use their words to analyze their document and their way of working. Either it's more formal, less formal, and on the level of understanding of the people. I saw huge documents written by people in a factory where they had about 10% of the people who actually cannot read at all. So completely illiterate, not functionally illiterate. And you put them to sign a document. It took 10 seconds to make a signature on the paper. What's the value of that? So I was talking with their boss. Boss, let's have a discussion with that. A 10 minutes discussion. What you have to care? See, to clarify them that she is a company are using only the data it needs from you in order to give you the salary, to check your health, which are legal requirements and nothing more. If you have questions, ask. So you can translate them into a discussion in 10 minutes. All that matter for them. So sometimes it's simpler than that. That means to care.
I agree with that. I remember when GDPR came out, a lot of companies were like really up in arms about it because it was so complex and expansive. And in the US, we weren't accustomed to laws like that. And even with my European clients, I would tell them a lot of stuff doesn't even apply to you because you don't use data in those ways. So don't be concerned. We're not going to go overboard because depending on how you're using data, your risks aren't as big. Maybe not everything applies to you anyway. So I love the fact that you talked about principles because I think principles are going to be the future way that we deal with data protection. right now, I think we're in a state, especially we're having in the US, where we're seeing all these little laws passed from state to state. And what you're seeing is a steady drumbeat of, okay, this change happened, this new law happened. But I think from a business perspective, companies need to really have a data strategy that includes data protection as opposed to them trying to react to every new law and regulation. What do you think?
By the way, I wanted to maybe to brag a little, but how I noticed that what I it's relevant for some. I have a lot of contacts and people I really discuss with from all the continents, from different countries, with completely different legislation, but most of the concerns are the same. So if what I write it's relevant for them and their concerns are relevant for me, and no matter they are in Africa, I have a lot of contacts from Africa and Middle East, and Israel. Not talking about US and India, where I have almost half of my contacts. So see, the main idea, main principle, main concern are the same. The differences are how to implement. So we are concerned about same things. Could be little differences of implementation, but the big part of the understanding and doing something in this domain is true and applicable to almost any country and any region. So
I agree with that. Are you seeing companies in your work, are you seeing them have a better understanding of how data protection needs to be implemented within their organizations? Or do you feel like it's still something that's hard for companies to understand?
it's difficult because there are different interests, by the way, sometimes. They are not aware what is needed, and too many consultants or lawyers are telling something else that you need us in order to fix your problems, which is not quite true. By the way, I had a discussion with a lawyer, said that we need a lawyer to implement a law. And from what I read from my culture, it's no, the principle of the law, a good law should be understood by those who were targeted. Doesn't need a lawyer. And if for each lawyer, if each law you would need a lawyer, I would ask how would be in construction or in restaurants where they have a lot more laws to comply and a lot more difficult. So they have a lawyer to translate the laws for construction and for the food. I don't think so. So okay, they could help management understand the law, not doing their job. It's a different story. So unfortunately, it's too much interest in building a wrong kind of awareness, I suppose. So, because of lobby interest or others, so I would think that another 5, 10 years it would be needed until companies will understand what would be their benefits and what they really have to do in order to be compliant.
Yeah. Sometimes I think companies think of compliance as almost like a finish line. It's like a race. And then once we get to the end of the line, then we're compliant. But really, compliance, just like you said, is really action. It's like, what are you doing actively within the business to align with those principles? What do you think?
Yeah, but I'm not sure, depending on what companies we are talking about, because there are some companies which will never be compliant because their business model is completely against this. Not Meta, Google, Alphabet, Amazon. They will never be compliant. They will run out of business, or they will have to change completely their business in order to be compliant. So they will use all their power to do not to respect it. And until now, they were very, very successful. But it's about power. So when companies like this have power a lot more than my country, for example, see the budget, how it was a big company, more than the revenue of my country, you can understand why. We can limit and put some barriers, some part, or at least eliminate the most critical one, like it was in US, started with data about children, where they take. So yes, so if we cannot do everything, we can have to choose our battles. And maybe starting with those at risk would be better. So we don't fix everything at once, but where it's more critical. And yes, starting with children, with health data and things like that, this would be a good start from my point of view.
Yeah, I think that's true. Think that when you're working with companies, obviously you have to figure out, like you said, like their business model, what they're trying to achieve, what types of risks they have, because some things have higher risks than others, and then try to put them on a pathway towards maturity. But are you seeing companies become more mature, more understanding of data protection in your work?
Yes, I saw some company, at least the normal companies, which where data is not their core business. Everybody's handling data, but it's not core business of handling data. Those started to be more aware and to understand they could have even benefits out of this. And by the way, a topic which I addressed, which is not addressed, is how I called it was the dark data, which is hidden. In many companies, 50% of the data you have it, you never use it, it consumes resources. So starting with a company from data protection perspective, see, you have some data, you have no reason, legal basis to process. What data? We don't have only CVs. When I showed them with their admin that they have 10% of the data, no, 10 times more than they saw, and they started to measure all this data, they were amazed. See how money you pay for the storage, for the software, not because the storage, not the hardware, the storage, the maintenance, backups. So they noticed that, see, indirectly they obtained some benefits of fixing some of their processes, increased efficiency, or marketing, guys. When they have clean data, not without a lot of redundancy or useless data they never used, they became more effective and they closed more deals. So they started, some of them, to see some benefits, maybe some more indirect benefits. But all things are, as you said, it's not only data protection by itself. Sometimes when I do something, I notice a problem in the operational area or in other area which can be improved. This way you get real support. And when top management see an advantage, okay, let's do more. Let's see what we can see. And this could last. So it's something that lasts. They saw some values and we are at the beginning, but the trend is good, I suppose.
I think it's true because companies do have a lot of data. Maybe it's part of the big data wave many years ago where companies were just collecting everything because they thought everything was important. But in general, even big companies, a lot of times they have a lot of redundant data, things that are old, things that they don't need, things that no one uses that really create a risk for them. So, as you say, getting rid of things that they don't need, understanding, having that clean data, the consented data or data that has those legal basis can help companies not have so much risk, can help them save money because they're not storing things that they don't need. But then also, especially as we see companies try to move more into more advanced technologies, it's hard to move into those areas if you have data lagging, old data. It just doesn't work in those systems. So I think I also agree and hope that that's a trend because I think that I agree that there could be horizontal aspects of data protection or being able to understand your data in a way that will help you in your business and in different areas.
One aspect I liked in US, which we don't have in many countries in Europe, it is a synergy between data protection, privacy, as you call it, and consumer protection. So, like, it started with deceptive design technique. See, first they were noticed in relation to customer protection, and with that, now move to including in Europe, they just started, and many times organizations handling this are completely different organizations that they don't talk between them. So we don't have these synergies, which would be useful. That's the part I don't like, that we don't learn from others for good example. See, some others have did something right that works. So why we have to reinvent the wheel if this is working there?
That's true. You made an excellent point when you're saying that you have contacts all over the world, and we are having the same issues, but we're tackling it in different ways. So you're right. It's like if a different jurisdiction has a good idea, why not adopt it or try to at least learn from it so that you're not recreating the wheel?
One law which would be a good source of inspiration for some, I would like the Sarbanes-Oxley law.
Sarbanes-Oxley.
Yeah, where for financial reporting, for misleading information, the CFO could go to jail. So that's personal for misleading. And by the way, this was not replicated in other laws, but should have been something good, where you can prove that they intentionally mislead the authorities. So maybe really I would like to see, because then on and only then the top management will feel responsible with when it's about their money, not necessarily, or maybe their freedom. They will understand if only company is responsible and company will pay the fine, nothing will happen.
That's an interesting point of view. Actually, I had a gentleman who's going to be on the show. We were talking about data as an asset. And so, if you think of data as an asset as opposed to like a commodity, you bring more value to it. And so, maybe part of that discussion really is maybe data like money or data in a way that we consider it more valuable and it is deserving of more protection. What do you think?
Yeah, I see data as an asset, and any theories are trying to mention this. By the way, this was one reason I left the cybersecurity part, because theoretically they admit now that processes and data are assets. However, still 90% of the accent is protecting the network, not about data. Most companies don't have something. So that was 20 years ago. Seeing now the same things and a lot of money on tools to protect the network, whatever is there. Oh, we should start. And theoretically, many people said 20 years ago to classify data, to see different kind of data. They have different risks and to protect the data, not only the network. Yeah, that's 1% of the effort. Because what I learned in a training a long time ago, which I really liked and maintained, people said, this is important. Okay, measure the money they put on that. That's important. Yes, it's critical to us. How much budget do you offer? Like data protection is important. Yes, it's one of top three. How much budget? It's 0.0001% of your budget. Yes. So in this case, I said, if I would be shareholder, either you are lying and it's not a priority, either it is, and I should fire you because you don't put money where you have the priorities. So it cannot both be true. So the important thing is where you put your money on. Staying that things are important and allocating zero budget or close to zero, it's not quite.
I agree with that.
Many consultants are not telling this because why? Because they are paid by the customer. And I worked a lot with all big four companies, by the way, a lot. And I have friends there and I work with them. And in a conference, I asked a question. It was about cost management. And what cost management? I said, it sometimes bullshit. You have some just recommendation, reduce 10% the budget of all the department. I saw example. Yes, we reduced the money for paying the Oracle license. We don't need support. We pay on incident because we didn't have any incident in the last 3 years. Right. They made some reduction in fees. Next year, an incident. We pay the fees for 5 years for that one incident. So that was cost management. And when I asked, it was vice president of Ernst Young Global and about some things. And said, he knows, and it's true. Unfortunately, like I said, I'm paid by my customer. I cannot tell them on their money that they are stupid. So I'm trying to suggest to do differently, but finally, I don't put in the report because they don't want to see that in the report. So between big companies and big four, the final report, it's a political statement of all different aspects. And what I said that they didn't like at all, CFOs, that the business of big four sometimes, that I thought that all the businesses that collapsed in US, in Europe, that collapsed completely, they had excellent reports from big four company, all of them with no exception. So I said, why? Because it's a business that is very similar, like I said, like when mafia started in southern Sicily, where they asked a protection task. So having a report from the audit, from the big four auditor, it doesn't mean anything. Just you are allowed to continue your business. So see, it's similar. It's not the same things. It's not blackmail. They don't push, but it's used the same way, unfortunately, by big companies. Just to have somebody to blame in case we fail. It's not our fault. We have an audit and they said it's okay. We wanted to do. And they assume this role to be blamed in case of something for big money, of course, not for free.
That's so funny. That is it's so funny and true. Oh my goodness. Well, if it were the world according to you, Daniel, and we did everything you said, what would be your wish for data protection anywhere in the world, whether that be regulation, human behavior, or technology?
Human behavior would be the most important part because companies cannot take decisions. Are people there based on their values, their habits sometimes. So practically there are people on both sides and how they think, what are they driven by. That matters a lot. And this is, if we'll change these laws, doesn't change too much. We have seen in many parts. It's good, it's necessary, but it's not. Technology, working for 45 years in IT, sometimes it changed for worse. So it's a tool, like it's the old example with the hammer. You can use to build something or you can use against your enemies. By the way, we seem to be the first usage for a few 100,000 years. So they didn't have nails when they invented the hammer. So initially the hammer had other purposes. Always people. But it took me about 25, 30 years to understand that.
It's important. I agree. People business, it is a relationship business. So being able to build relationships and do that communication is really vital and being able to be successful in this type of role. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's such a thrill to meet you. And please, for anyone who's listening, definitely follow Daniel on LinkedIn. He puts up some of the most amazing information that can really help people understand data protection and consulting in that role.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet you finally after all these years. So we'll talk soon, and I look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
I will be honored. Thank you again, and we'll talk. At least on LinkedIn and others.
We'll definitely talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.